Our next item is to receive the first quarter financial report as of September 30th, 2015, and adopt a resolution amending the fiscal year 2015-16 operating and capital improvement program budgets to reappropriate fiscal year 2014-15 carryover encumbrances. That's a mouthful.
Good evening, Vice Mayor and members of the City Council. The city's first quarter budget report provides a timely update of where we are for the first 3 months of the year. The best way to get a good understanding or a picture of what the first quarter looks like is to compare it to both the budget and the same time period in the previous year. As noted in the staff report, this quarterly report has been updated to provide an easier to read and understandable format, and with the intent to place it on the finance page of the city's website. Staff would welcome any feedback on the new format and any suggestions for improvement if the City Council has some. Okay. Beginning with the general fund. With 25% of the year complete, general fund expenditures are on track at 24%, while total general fund revenues are at 14% of budget, which is down 4% when compared to the prior year. The majority of this variance is due to a timing difference in the business license revenue, which I will explain a little bit in more detail a little bit later in this report. I can't see it on my side, but one of the things that I did add this time was a projection of what the reserves would be. I know that hasn't been on there before, so the projected year-end general fund reserves is approximately $18 million or 43% of budgeted appropriations. Keep in mind that $5.9 million of this is restricted for capital projects, so that leaves approximately $12.1 million or 29% that is unrestricted. The council should be commended for implementing and maintaining such a healthy reserve policy. Moving on to the general fund revenues. The majority of the general fund revenue comes from the first 6 categories listed on this spreadsheet, which is the taxes, their property tax, sales tax, transit occupancy tax, motor vehicle license fees, regulatory fee, and business license. These 6 revenue sources make up 68% of the budget for the general fund revenue. While revenues are, you can see on here, you can see here when you compare the prior year to where we are currently that we are down 14% or $939,000. So I will just briefly go over a few of those variances. The property tax, you can see, is up approximately $87,000 when compared to the prior year due to an increase in supplemental property tax and property transfer tax. This increase reflects an increase in the sale of properties in the city of San Bruno as they are based on the change of ownership. Sales tax are down $202,000 when compared to the prior year, and as mentioned in this report, this is due to a lower cleanup payment received from the Board of Equalization for the April through June quarter. This revenue is lower than 25% due to only receiving 1 payment at the time of this report. Transit occupancy tax is showing an increase of 8% over the prior year, with only 2 months of revenue being received. Staff will continue to monitor this revenue source and may request a budget increase in this line item during the mid-year or the third quarter budget report. On business taxes, you can see there's a decrease of $833,000 when compared to the prior year, and this is due to receiving a payment from one of the city's larger businesses in October, which falls in the second quarter. It was received in August in the prior year. However, the amount the city did receive from this business is lower than the amount that was paid in the previous fiscal year, and staff is currently working to validate this calculation, and will update the council more during the mid-year report and include any necessary budget adjustments at that time. Expenditures are $9.9 million or 24% of budget, and this is right on target, and this shows that the departments are continuing to monitor their expenditures and staying within their budgets. This is a table I added, and the reason I added it wasn't to call anybody out or anything. It was that I attended the League of California Cities conference, and one of the things that a lot of the instructors would say is, this is your percentage of general fund revenues, or this department is the percentage. The reason I did call out safety is I just put it as a total because that's how people normally say public safety. They don't say fire or police. So just wanted to give you an idea of when you look at your general fund revenues, each one of these departments, this is a percentage of revenue that is allocated for those. Another thing that I added this year was to give you a brief update on the 2014-15 annual general fund update. This is not normally brought to the council until we do the CAFR, which is usually in January. So just wanted to give you a preliminary update on that. So as I said, the auditors are still reviewing these numbers, so they could change somewhat. At fiscal year end, revenues came in at 105% of budget, or $2 million higher than budgeted, and expenditures came in at 98%, or $642,000 less than budget. This allowed staff to move approximately $1.7 million to the general fund reserves. So good job. Okay. Staff is requesting the reappropriation or a carryover of prior year budget amounts that are necessary when services or projects are started but not completed. At the end of this fiscal year, total carryovers requested in this report equals $44 million. And normally, because we haven't always adopted the CIP at the same June time, you would have seen this at the CIP part in the budget during December, January. So when we presented the budget to you in June, you saw the estimated carryovers. These are the actual carryover numbers now. Okay. Overall, enterprise and internal service funds are performing as anticipated. All expenditures in these funds are at or below 25%, and revenues are in line with the previous year. Staff will provide a more detailed analysis on these funds in the mid-year report. I added this sheet also, just wanted to kind of explain and walk you through it. One of the items that council has not seen previously was the first column and the last column, and this is showing you how we ended the year unaudited currently. Well, probably by mid-year I'll have the audited numbers, or I will have the audited numbers, and so you'll have the actuals in those columns. So if you look at this, the first column shows you where we're projecting that we're going to end 14-15, begin 15-16, and then you follow what was adopted, any changes throughout the year, and then what we're projecting. Keep in mind, this is if 100% of revenues come in as budgeted and 100% of expenditures are spent. So that's where we come up with that projected number. So it doesn't mean that that's an actual number. We could come in quite a bit less, as far as if there's a overage or deficit, it may not be what is on this spreadsheet. It's just a projection based on the budget. And with that concludes my report, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Any questions for staff?
Through the chair.
Go.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Mayor. In regards to the new format, it was, and I do read those, and so it was different, but I found it good as far as layout and the information. Having these two added columns, I think, are of assistance to us. Even though I know it's not finalized, I think it helps us to know where we perceive we've been, where we're going. I think that's also based on you doing the CIP and the budget at the same time. I think that gave us the notice as well as the format you use here as far as the cable department situation. So I think that needs to be continued, that we have that information real time. And I think this does that. And so I do like the new format. Thank you for that. But with that said, on the cable, I was wondering, I had in my notes to bring up under this topic, where are we at, or maybe to the city manager, as far as the subcommittee meeting or us coming to the council as a whole, as far as reviewing where we're at, suggestions for the future?
So we have scheduled a cable subcommittee meeting for next week. Thursday, December 3rd. That has not yet been noticed, but it's a standing subcommittee, and so it will be publicly noticed. And we anticipate a study session, as we've indicated to the City Council before, to follow. If we can schedule, it's still in December. I realize the time is getting a little bit tight between now and the next series of holidays, but either in the second or third week of December or beginning of January is the current time frame.
Thank you.
Angela, since we had a question from the public, can you really briefly address the question about why we're showing that negative balance in the cable?
Again, it's as I mentioned, that's budget, so that could be much better at year end. We are aggressively trying to reduce that by a rate increase that actually went into effect in August, so it's not really showing up in this first quarter because we haven't really gotten good numbers. So we'll see that more probably in the mid-year, how that's doing. And we did lower the equity transfer, as you know, when we discussed this during the budget. So we are doing things to actually, we are aware of it, we are working on it, so it isn't something that we're not, that we're ignoring. We're trying to move forward and correct that.
So in layman's terms, no one's did anything wrong. It was just an inaccurate projection.
Correct.
And so what's not coming in, even though it's a large number in a negative sense, things are still progressing. It's just that it's not as good as what we thought.
The negative may not be as large as what's projected in this report. If you look at the end of the year projection, or the beginning in that first column, that is where we think we're going to be because when numbers are pretty much done. We'll wait and see if the auditors make any changes. If it fluctuates, I don't think it'll be a lot. So we were aware of that during the budget process. If you remember correctly, we brought that forward and we knew about that. So that was why we made a lot of the changes that we did make. So, and again, I believe that rate increase went into effect. I want to say we brought it to council end of July, and I don't think it went into effect until maybe the September payments. I know we were supposed to be in August as far as the rates being published and everything. I'm not sure exactly when they, so, yeah.
Okay. And I had one more question. Since you highlighted the 63% for public safety, how does that compare to other cities? Is that pretty typical?
It is pretty typical. Safety is always usually, because there's more staff, you have more officers and more fire, so than others, such as finance, there's 10 of us, so with police, there's quite a few more employees. So.
Okay, great, thank you. Any other questions? Okay, we do have an action on this item, so action from the council?
What, you want me to introduce the resolution? Before I do that, Angela, I do want to commend you for taking the initiative and changing the format. Sometimes if we don't know how it can be different, we have no suggestions for you, but it looks like it's much easier to understand and to project forward what is going on. So having said all those things, and thank you for your hard work and your team too. I know they work a long time, and I see them sometimes at night with stacks of paper in front of them. So do pass on our appreciation of their efforts. And I will introduce the resolution.
Councilmember O'Connell.
Aye.
Councilmember Medina.
Aye.
Councilmember Ibarra.
Aye.
Vice Mayor Salazar.
Aye.